So what does a consequence look like in the Bitcoin world?
I would expect the consequence, and among other things, a very, very public censure of the pool that attempts to do this, and a request by the core developers for people to abandon that pool. And I think that, since this requires collusion by a lot of actors, public shaming would be very effective. But again, there are other countermeasures. This is a very unlikely edge case with a lot of possible fixes. It's a great theoretical analysis, but it looks at the Bitcoin network as an abstract state machine and not as a collection of humans driven by motivations that are not entirely rational.
So obviously, summarizing here, do you think that anything is going to come from this as far as the development team is concerned? Or do we think that this is something that now that it's understood, or at least, people are knowing to watch for it, that it'll just be watched for? And if something happens to warrant a change will be made. But otherwise, it's just watching. I
expect we're going to see better instrumentation of mining software.
Well, then
and
sounds like
we're probably going to see some more scrutiny on mining pools and their behavior and propagation tactics on the network to ensure that if someone is trying to attempt something like this, it is seen early on and quickly enough. So yes, this is having a tremendous positive impact on Bitcoin development, because while it is a theoretical case, it's a very interesting one. We can start looking at designing countermeasures. It's probably much more important in the future when fees are bigger than reward, because then it would change the way people prioritize blocks and transactions in blocks. So that it has some important implications for later. It's a great academic paper. It's very interesting analysis. It's great computer science, but it is not a market disaster or a practical attack in any way at the moment.
So this wouldn't just apply to Bitcoin, it would apply to any altcoin too, right?
It applies to any blockchain-based currency.
So, actually, this isn't just great for Bitcoin and strengthening it against potential future attacks, but also for any altcoin. So, yeah, I agree with you. I see this as a win.
Precisely. Here's the interesting thing. While it would be almost impossible to pull something like this on Bitcoin simply because of the amount of collusion, the size of the pool you have to assemble, and the willingness...
It's a grand conspiracy.
and the willingness to shoot a $3.7 billion market with a shotgun just in case you make some pennies on the side. Quite honestly, miners would have to believe that they can make more by messing the network now than by simply waiting and participating in the network, which I think is unlikely. But here's the thing. On an altcoin, none of these things apply. So we are going to see these types of attacks tried out on an altcoin, and we are going to see these failure modes play out, just like we saw 51% attacks, just like we saw upside down difficulty and retargeting problems when ASICs pulled out. The altcoins are going to be the laboratory where we will see these failure modes play out. And that's going to be another great learning experience. So yeah, I'm not worried about Bitcoin. I think this is actually a great development.
So on the subject of the altcoins, I was thinking about this and kind of asking myself, now that this is something that's known, is it ethical to try this out? To organize an attack on an altcoin? Would it be better to tell the people or not? Or is it just better to let criminals kind of figure it out for themselves while they try to make it work?
As a security professional, I believe in responsible disclosure, and that means that if you find security problems, you responsibly disclose them to the people who can apply fixes, and then you disclose them to the public soon thereafter to force the people who can apply fixes to actually do something about them. That's been the policy for security vulnerability disclosure. It's worked well in that space. I think it should be applied to altcoins. Tell the founders, give them a week to fix it. Whether they do or not, then tell everyone.
But is this something that the founders of an altcoin could actually fix? Didn't you say it was kind of up to the mining software?
Well, yes, it's not just up to the mining software. It's more up to monitoring the network itself as it propagates blocks. And there may be different fixes, and they may not be able to directly fix it right away. We'll see. It's going to be interesting.
I remember seeing an infographic a little while ago where they were calculating the cost of mounting a 51% attack on the Bitcoin network and comparing it to the military budgets. The cost that they had calculated, whoever put this infographic together, was way more than most countries' entire military budgets. So that makes people feel good. But if it's that hard to get 51% of the network hashing power in the hands of maybe one person or entity, wouldn't it also be really, really hard with Bitcoin, since the network is growing all the time, to get 25%?
Exactly. I mean, that's exactly the case. So let's look at it from a different perspective. The hashing power now is what? Has it already passed 5 peta? I'm not sure. So it was somewhere between 4 and 5 petahashes. It was 1 petahash in August. It was half a petahash in June. So a 51% attack in June would have been a 250 gigahash attack, and a 51% attack today is a 2 petahash attack. So just in the last 4 months, the effort to mount a 51% attack has quadrupled.
Net are ASICs good or bad? Because I mean, on the
net ASICs are great because they put so much power in individual hands that pools are less important, and they've increased the hashing power so much that even a 25% attack is more than the entire network hashing power was just a few months ago.
You're saying that they take away from pools. I don't really understand how ASICs can take away from pools, because it's not like the number of miners actually trying to mine are going down. So isn't it kind of just...
And are people doing solo mining with ASICs? I didn't think that was
You'd have to have a lot
workable.
of ASICs in order to solo mine.
Over the long term, the relative advantage of having a pool, which increases your probability of actually finding a block as part of a pool, whereas you just keep trying and failing otherwise. The more hashing power you have in individuals' hands in ASICs, the less important that differentiator is.
But isn't that percentage based?
It is percentage based, but it's also, you've got to consider that pools charge fees, right? So at some point, it is more profitable to go out mine on your own if more people mine on their own. And by the way, one of the things that this 25% attack or selfish mining or whatever, the best outcome we can have from this theoretical analysis is to recognize that mining pools themselves, the concentration in mining pools is the problem. You can't do any of these attacks without collusion, and mining pools are the best way to organize collusion without having to get the approval of every single person. So in the long run, P2 pool, the peer-to-peer pool for independent mining, is probably our best chance. Start your own pool, get off the big pools. If it's more than 1% of the hashing power, get off it, get onto P2 pool, and take away the power of the big mining pools. And then none of these attacks matter.
You're asking people to do a thing that's against their economic best interest in the short to medium term, though. I mean, just...
Right? In the long term, though, the cost of the pool fees exceeds the benefits that they offer. So there is a point at which pools no longer make financial sense.
Yeah, but it has to do more with like a tipping point in terms of like the quantities of people who are in pools relative to not in pools. Because if everybody's not in pools, then yeah, you're right.
There's an easier answer. If tomorrow morning being in a pool actually enables the owner of that pool to take down the $3.7 billion economy that you just invested in through buying your ASIC, then you're going to leave that pool because the risk of them destroying Bitcoin is far greater than the benefit they give you. Basically, you're looking at your golden goose and the people around you have got a glint in their eye and they just pulled out a carving knife and you're like, I don't want to be part of this party anymore. Thank you very much. I'm leaving, because what you're about to do is going to be far more damaging than the benefits you give me.
Yeah,
that's the one thing that the paper does not take into consideration. The fact that if you understand how this is going to destroy Bitcoin in general, if it's pulled off, then you would not participate even if it gives you temporary advantage.
We talk about shining examples and horrible warnings, right? And so it seems to me that you can't really have a lesson of this magnitude lacking one of those things. There has to be a bad thing that happens, right?
Well, the good news is that if the type of selfish mining does happen, its impact will be minimal.
Yeah.
Its fix will be instant. The public backlash will be large and pools will be over. I think that's a far more likely scenario.
More than 300,000 users and counting trust blockchain.info. It's a Bitcoin wallet service and a wealth of Bitcoin information, and it's completely free to use. With a blockchain.info wallet, you'll get the convenience of a web wallet and the security of a desktop client. Blockchain.info is also a block explorer. You can use it to see Bitcoin transactions in real time, check the balance of any Bitcoin address, and view many handy Bitcoin charts, all for free. See what they have to offer today at blockchain.info.